We will be together throughout the day, and we have a lot to discuss. I think for now, it's time to continue and to have a plenary lecture by Konstantinos Titselikis, the Dean of the School of Economic and Regional Studies from the University of Macedonia, next to us here. He will talk about injured liberties, scientific knowledge, and academics under persecution. Kostis, I invite you to come maybe better to the podium, so that, because if you come to the podium.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here with you. I think it's the first time I'm talking live after a few months. This is a great pleasure, really. So, dear friends and colleagues, I have been commissioned to talk about a general topic, so kind of introductory remarks for a very specific and very interesting and hot issue. So I will talk a little bit about the basics. Freedom of speech as a pillar of our political and legal configuration. Freedom of thought is the basic, is the pillar also, that emerged from ancient times as a constituent parameter of democracy, or at least as a means to challenge the established opinion and policies. And this is very important. So the way, if I'm free to talk against the governor, then I create something new ideas, a reaction, counter-reaction, and this is the play, the political play. If there's no... So, freedom of speech and freedom of thought constitute the seed from which a change can grow up. And this is really the important thing here. So scientific speech also, research, is a part of this, liberties. So it becoming scientific, becoming societal, and then becomes political in any way. A change can be for the better through these liberties, can lead towards the dark, so can go backwards. But in any case, this kind of liberties is very important. So the possibility of change is the marvelous foundation of democracy. Okay, and this you have to keep in mind. So that a single person, as part of the polity and demos, can give birth to a new idea, to trigger a new form of relation. And this is a major challenge for supporting freedom of speech. Do we need to put it under restrictions? And this is another big question that goes hand to hand with the liberty of speech. What kind of restrictions? Moral, administrative, penal? How our political and legal systems protect or enhance the possibility for anyone to say anything, anytime? Do we need an institutional or a legal norm to tell us up to which point we can say whatever we want? In the past century, we have experienced a tremendous development of the possibility to say what we believe is right. Constraints have been categorized and criminalization has been limited. Still, freedom is not limitless, but it's framed by constraints put by ourselves, first of all, maybe our boss, our university, the society, the government, the law. In fact, in our social or professional life, we face limitations of moral, political, professional, or even legal character that channel our thoughts and our speech. We don't have to forget it. So freedom, if I go a little bit more legal, freedom of expression is protected by Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights, the most modern legal tool we have in our hands. Together, of course, with our constitutions. I think it's interesting just to remind you the wording of Article 10. So it goes, everyone has the right to freedom of expression. The right shall include freedom to hold opinions, to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. This article shall not prevent states from requiring the licensing of broadcasting, television, or cinema enterprises. And now, paragraph 2, which is very important, restrictions. The exercise of these freedoms, since it carries with it duties and responsibilities, may be subject to such formalities, conditions, restrictions, or penalties as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society. I repeat it, necessary to a democratic society in the interest of national security, I repeat it again, in the interest of national security, territorial integrity, or public safety for the prevention of disorder, of crime, for the protection of health, this is very new, we just experienced last year, or morals, which is very old, for the protection of the reputation of right or rights of others, for preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, or for maintaining the authority and impartiality of the judiciary. So all these kind of restrictions channel our liberties to tell, to say, to write anything we want, anytime. And the European Court of Human Rights, of course, who is called to control and to interpret this legal text, said some, among others, a very important comment. Freedom of expression also covers information or ideas that offend, shock, or disturb the state or any section of the population, such as the demands of pluralism, tolerance, and broad-mindedness, without which there is no democratic society. And this saying has been repeated several times. In one of the cases was Macedonia, dealing with the Macedonian minority versus the Greek government. Even the term Macedonia was a disturbing thing that led to this saying by the European Court of Human Rights. Irrelevant satire also enjoys the protection of the Convention. The court considers that this form of expression can play a very important role in open discussion of matters of public concern, an indispensable feature of our democratic society. So we go in circles around our freedoms, the constraints, and the configuration, the environment which is a democratic society. So democratic society is the most important term here to give us, to step and to lead us where is this borderline of limitations. It's clear that freedom of speech is one of the most important pillars of democracy then. The more voices are heard, the more pluralism is experienced, and therefore democratic pluralism is enhanced and embedded. We have to be careful though. If different points of view represent pluralism, then spreading false information and hatred undermines pluralism and therefore democracy. Screening or suppressing one's expression of thought or information for national or state security touches an ambiguous zone of legitimacy. What in fact prevails? State security or freedom of speech? Borderline situations are used always by suppressive regimes. This is clear. They show clearly that the frame of freedom can be narrowed because they are always a superior goal to serve. National security is a key concept, of course. It is plastic and can be used by any kind of government. From democracy, though, to dictatorship, which is obvious, we can collect examples in which freedom of speech has been manipulated in favor of the political power and the ones who handle political power, even in case they have been elected. I could mention the case of Socrates that broke the law for his ideas that led to his execution, but it's a very old example. But in the recent times, from the US in the late 40s, early 50s, and the Soviet Union to modern Turkey, Iran, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, China, among many other countries today. In the past, freedom of scientific research in pre-war liberal democracies had to be apolitical under constraints of political, ethical, or religious character. In the Soviet Union, academia should serve political ideology and the development plans of the state. Slowly, after the Second World War, academic freedom moved to a more political position, encompassing political views and opinions. So scientific research went hand to hand with political views. So numerous scholars in different countries experienced threats. They were obliged to live and work in silence, and therefore to suppress an academic aspect of their identity. From many cases I know personally in Turkey, university professors experience threats, persecution, or anticipate their own self-exile abroad. Others who stayed in Turkey worked in an environment of silence and latent submission. Consequently, like in other countries that I mentioned, no ideas, no challenges of the established political power are anymore discussed. The academia remains mute and suppressed under threat. Academia staff have to report their colleagues for suspicious behavior, even to check each other's papers, in case that in their bibliography they mention somebody who had already been blacklisted. So why scholars are targeted by the political power? How an academic scholar can threat the political establishment? The answer is simple, and I have mentioned already, by producing new ideas, new knowledge. Of course, scholars are mobile and active members of a society. They intervene in public debates more and more. So they are not in favor always to the government. Sometimes they do. Unknowing ideas and information may challenge the political power at micro or macro level. So what's missing here? A culture of listening, tolerance, and respect for unknowing ideas and information. Of course, to be annoyed is not something bad, but to exert criminal law is something important and very, very, very annoying for us, for the liberty side. So brutal response by totalitarian governments to provocative ideas and opinions, like submissions to imprisonment or inhuman treatment, is obviously visible to us observers from the outside. However, we should not screen away repressions that seem light, like imposition of administrative constraints, firing professors in the West. I'm talking about our liberal democracies, that of those who express provocative ideas and shock the society, the government, and their own friends and colleagues at the universities. So we have a lot of cases that even in liberal democracies, a series of professors have been chased and terminated in different universities around the world, from the US to the Philippines, because they supported, for instance, the riots against the police, criticized Israel and gay movement, or challenged equality of sexes. I'm talking about examples that happened the past 10 years. Is that normal, or should be also tolerated by us, observers and activists? Which is the borderline, again, after which we are allowed to express our views linked to our scientific discipline or political and other opinion? Is there any criteria that matter? Are some fields that are untouchable from any critique and challenge, scientifically or politically speaking? I think these are crucial questions and the answer is not easy. Sometimes the answer could be at the same time yes and no. Answers could be framed with what is a democratic society, as described again. I'm going back to the European Convention on Human Rights and the Court of Strasbourg. So in one case, the court said the importance of academic freedom comprises academics' freedom to express freely their opinion about the institution or system in which they work, and freedom to distribute knowledge and truth without restriction. In doing so, the court referred to recommendation of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, I'm not giving you the number, concerning the protection of academic freedom and expression. The recommendation states, among other things, that academic freedom in research and in training should guarantee freedom of expression and of action, freedom to disseminate information, and freedom to conduct research and distribute knowledge and truth without restriction. and that history has proven that violations of academic freedom and university autonomy have always resulted in intellectual collapse, relapse, and consequently in social and economic stagnation. I think this is very interesting and remarkable and useful formulation that we should have in mind. So we saw that always it's a borderline between our freedom or one's freedom and then the political power or society that put this red thin line that of course is not there always. It's up to us to understand the limits, and then comes the law and the politics of a society to strengthen this line, to change the line, to put more restrictions or to lift the restrictions. After all, chasing scholars for their ideas and opinions is a sign of political angst from the side of the government. It's a sign of fear, and we have to understand the fear of the government. And this is important, I think, is again, as we cannot act as doctors or educators for the political staff or totalitarian governments or myopic staff and members of the university boards who have to be active. We should act as members of an international academic community which has coherent means of protection for her members all over the world. This approach is ideal or idealistic. However, that's why we're here. And lack of academic freedom means lack of freedom of speech, which amounts to serious democratic deficit. And this is, again, the main issue here. The concern is ours, all ours. It's not only about the academics. It will become ours, though, under one and only condition, that we do care about any people at risk or any people in need. This is the most critical and sensitive point of our discussion. We do care about academics at risk and academic funds, and this is wonderful, of course. It would be a task empty from any content of if does not correspond to a consistent praxis that encompasses solidarity against injustice of any kind, according, of course, to our means and forces. So respecting human rights is a political program and paradigm, an everyday practice and example. Thus, we follow ethics that establish a foundation for a global responsibility as a common value and understanding. We heard politicians in the beginning of this seminar or our convention talking about nice ideas, but it seems to me that they were lacking the point, especially the Vice Minister, if I'm allowed to criticize him. The Vice Minister of Northern Greece and Thrace talked about, was absolutely out of focus, and he misunderstood the point. Even the Secretary General from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I can tell this, I can say that we have to give examples. We have to offer our solidarity to those who are coming in need. We have hundreds or thousands of refugees who are students and have professional rights, professors, teachers, university professors, or researchers who have no recognition at all here in Greece and many other European countries of their diplomas or licenses. So, one main political issue to make these nice words praxis is to recognize the diplomas and the qualifications. Still, we are fighting to receive 1 or 2 scholars at risk here in Thessaloniki. We have done it in my school 4 years ago, just after the failed coup in Turkey. We received 1 academic from Turkey, and we offered institutional refuge for 2-3 years. Now she left to the US. The Aristotle University will offer also 1 position or 2, I hope. Let's push a bit. But what the what the ministry does? Absolutely nothing. We are trying to make them understand. So what the Vice Minister of Interior said, there's nothing. So we have to strive and to push the political establishment to understand that what they are talking about, solidarity for refugees, they don't do it. They have to do something, but they have to do in a global way. Not only those who have the diplomas, there are those who have just professional skills. So they have to go horizontally and to cover these needs. And that's why I would say that the problem of global indifference is underlying in human politics. We can name it global hypocrisy. They both often prevent social majorities and governments from arriving at ethical solutions. Indifference is becoming more and more systemic and structural characteristic of the governance. This is why public awareness of academic freedoms and the freedom of the academia, university professors and researchers, NGOs, and civil society is of key importance for our present and future as alive and mobile citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kostis. You said some very, very wise words here. And I think what we want to stress that Inspire Europe is exactly what it's trying to do. And this first conference here in Thessaloniki is the first step to mobilize more national funding as well. So we've already talked to the General Secretariat, and we hope to meet them soon to discuss a little bit more, not just words, but also actions. And even with the Vice Minister of Macedonia and Thrace, this was the first connection we had. We know things go slow, but this is why all of the partners of Inspire Europe are working hard in their own countries and in the neighboring regions. And this is what we're going to discuss today, how we can actually do that into practice, either because it's in universities or at the work area. Thank you.
You have discussion?
We will have a total discussion at the end of the next section. So now it's, I think, very important that we go into the first morning session and to start discussing how we can build a culture of welcome at Greek universities. I'm very happy to be joined either physically or through internet by excellent colleagues. We will discuss, and we will start first of all with the paradigm of the University of the Aegean. And we are very happy that Chrysi Vitsilaki, the rector of the Aegean University, will join us. She will discuss about everything that is being done in Aegean University the past years. So after that, we will have Matthew Snyder, the Vice President of the University of Strasbourg, to discuss to us not only what's happening in Strasbourg, but in the whole of the French universities as regards support of scholars at risk. Then a partner from our project, Henriette Ströber, from the European University Association, will discuss to us and will present us some of the work that we have done already for the first year in Inspire Europe in the survey that they have done around a lot of universities. Dionysios Chionis will also give us an economic aspect of supporting researchers at risk. He's a professor of economics from the Democritus University of Thrace. And at the end, and very important as well, we have Ahmad Aras Hemati, who is very strong. He was the founder of the Study in Greece internet site, which was supported by the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he will also discuss in the minutes that we have both the problems for education and for support of refugees in Greece, but also his personal story and his personal struggle. I invite all panelists who are not here to open their their cameras. The Χρυσή Βιτσιλάκη, Henriette Stöber, Dionysios Chionis, these are linked from the web, and the rest of the two speakers are here with us. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here with us, and we look forward to your ideas and to your discussion that we're going to have. After we have this first presentation of your interesting talks, then we invite our participants, attendees from around the world, to give their opinion and to ask questions so we can have a very fruitful and a very lively discussion. Rector of the University of the Aegean, we start with you.
Good morning to everyone. I was really looking forward to joining this important conference from Thessaloniki. The activities of the University of the Aegean, direct from the front. What you see right behind me are the Aegean shores. You can tell it's live by the noise made. Right below my home is actually what you see. This is one of the very few life support systems, very important. They didn't work, that people use to try and find a better life in crossing the shores across Europe. The different message that I want to send to you is not only to very briefly present the multiple and multi-level activities that our academic community undertook for the past 2 decades at the University of the Aegean, but also more to give you a sense that we are a different university in being the front, the shores that the universities, can I share my screen? I think, well, why it's not letting me share my screen? Is there something you need to do on your part, or we have it? Can you see my screen?
No, we cannot. Yeah.
Is there something that we need to do to show my presentation? Okay, does that mean you cannot see my presentation online? Please advise.
We have your presentation as well here, but I don't know.
Well, I have changed it and I won't be able.
You cannot see the green button of the share screen down at your.
I've done share screen. Okay, there. Share. How about this?
Okay.
There we are. Okay.
Excellent.
I just want, after showing you the sea itself, I want to show you where we really are and how we serve, and why indeed the university was the real actual gateway of refugee waves hitting here, mainly on the island of Lesbos. If I were to take the, what you see here is practically the shores, except they're much closer. And so the university from the first day and its personnel had to first collect the refugees from the shores, work voluntarily in all sorts of activities to try and bring them on shore and first to safety. And then throughout the past 2 decades, and especially the last decade, try to take on a series of activities that worked on all levels, from creating an academic observatory of the work being done on refugees in the Mediterranean Sea, creating an anti-racist observatory as well, carrying out educational lessons from the refugees in the camps themselves, and of course, the pillar which is of most direct interest to this conference, to work with scientists among the refugees to help them make a better future, both as persons and as researchers in Europe, should they have the chance. I wanted to give you a sense of another type of university, which is in effect a port of studies, but was also the port of the refugees. We have thus a very active engagement throughout the past years that began mostly with voluntary engagement. And in the past years, I will try and show you only some of the most important, more structured forms of intervention that we had with the refugees. So I will start with a basic and an important Horizon project that we have carried out with Professor Rania Joraki, which in effect tried to do the first level support of researchers and academics that we could first had to locate within the people in the camps, actually, okay? They didn't arrive at our university through an email. We went and sought them in the camps themselves, and we still are working. And our point was to help them from basics such as writing their CVs or following their asylum procedures, because this was their port of entry, as was the port of entry for all of Europe, okay? Let us remember this. And then we worked with a very big European internship network to try and support them and create seminars, we would bring them from the camps onto the university and try and give them access to our research activities, to our laboratories, while at the same time providing food and access to doctors and things of that sort, which is, as you can understand, something very different than any other project that one can carry in other countries in order to support refugee scientists. You may see here that we carried out throughout the year more than, actually there are more than this, 40 meetings, and you see a great number of 3,000 participants, as at any point here we have had more than 10,000 people, but you can tell that here we have a greater number of participants than we had scientists, because a lot of people wanted to participate in the courses. 6 of them, as you can tell, that we created and offered. And people could study, participate in seminars, and get a certificate which they would use as they would move further on. We had a mentoring system. We were offering to more than 30 people who had very high level education, such as masters and PhDs, a specific particular mentoring in order to try and give them the first aid and the first moves that they had to follow, and then try and forward them into collaboration, through collaboration with networks that we have with many European universities, and through our network praxis, as I said. There were academic results of this, and you can see it in, I sort of tried to isolate in the blue. We do have in our site a video that you can watch more of these activities that were carried out within this Horizon project. And this also had a second phase in which we were one of the many European countries who were in the network, where we took on displaced persons that were researchers, refugee researchers, and we tried to support them in carrying out the research and further getting knowledge and experience and access to the networks of through the Euraccess network. I'm sure most of you know it, and try to help them in becoming mobile within the European higher education networks. So it has been an academic, but at the same time, what we may call, although it sounds simplistic for the whole background, humanitarian support of researchers, exactly because this is a frontline activity. In trying to keep up with, of course, you can tell I can tell you much more, but I try and go very quickly just to give you a feel of what we are doing here and to invite you, each and every one of you, to collaborate with us and to further promote this joint project of first supporting refugees and particularly supporting academic and research refugees to find a better life and create a new life on our continent and in our countries. Another major activities that we did, which is not addressed toward researchers, but goes back to the first steps that we need to do to try and support the people that are coming in to create an academic life, and starting with language in our country and in Europe was a big long-term teaching of the language of the Greek language and of English language afterwards, because the refugees don't want to stay here. They came here in caravans in order to try and reach the advanced countries of Europe, which they see as their paradise. And this includes, through our interviews, the researchers. We try to suggest to them how research is very active and very resilient, and they can participate in Greece, but they look to the to the Western European countries and Central European countries. And that is something that we all need to address in order to help as academic institutions in try and funnel these massive refugee inflows throughout Europe, and particularly to funnel researchers and academics who are refugees to our institutions. So we have been supporting families, whole families. If you would come to our university in Rhodes, you would see in the afternoon and evening half of the camp to be in the university, where our students of the education departments would do activities for the children. We had psychologists and mentors that would talk to the female groups, women that needed support to deal with the whole crisis, being refugees and mothers, and doing all of the activities of another culture that a woman is called upon to do. Not that we are not called upon to do in our countries, but anyway. So this was a major activity of trying from the beginning to totally voluntarily give literacy activities within the camp and both at the Greek university. And many of these people got, all of the activities were carried out through a memorandum of collaboration and understanding that we have with the United Nations relevant body, and which we all know, and we have this throughout the university, and very active collaboration both at the island of Lesbos and on the island of Rhodes and Chios. And so this was an all around, as are many of our activities, support from picking up literacy from language in order to further help them. We have also, given that we were a lot of academics working on on refugees and supporting refugees, set up an observatory of the refugee and migration crisis in the Aegean. It also has a site, and you can look it up, and its aim is to disseminate information from our academic perspective, from the perspective of our academics, and to support the relevant research that is carried out throughout other universities and at our university. In effect, it is a public scientific dialogue blog and a repository of a lot of data that we have here collected. We have affiliations with many other centers, and we welcome more, as it has become a reference point and a context for dialogue for the study of refugee and migratory crisis. Given the voluntary association and activities that our academic and administrative staff and all of the personnel and students carried out, we started to have what is difficult to understand. Now we all understand it in our countries better, which is the eventual reaction on the part of the population whose everyday lives were overturned and totally undermined in what we would call their regularity and the everyday life that they had, that they could no longer have in a place of 20 or 30,000 people, where there were 10 or 12,000 persons. And especially during the crisis periods of 2009, 2015, we had as many as 200,000 people pass through the island with all of the rescue activities to try and, I want just to say a word. What is the lesson of all of this is that there are actually universities at the forefront. We can help in many ways, and this is the experience of our university. Refugees and refugee researchers need their academic work and their personalities and their rights supported and protected. But remember that they are refugees, unfortunately, before they're researchers, and that is quite important. We at the University of the Aegean would like to invite you for a next meeting on these shores, not in my house, but you're also welcome, but at the university. And we very much look forward to your collaboration. And
thank you very much, Rector.
Congratulations. Wonderful initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know there are a lot of colleagues also from the University of Aegean that are participating right now and listening to you. There was a lot of people that joined from your university. We have to move on quickly to the next speaker, and please stay for the discussion after we finish the first roundup of the first talks. Thank you again. So I invite Mathieu.
So, Kalimera, everybody. It's a great honor to be here in presence, because it's also important to meet people physically. And I want to thank again Alexandros Triantafylidis for the kind invitation, and Thessaloniki University also for the invitation. So just a few words. In Inspire Europe, I think what is important for us is to be inspired by experiences. And we heard the incredible experience of the Aegean University. And I want to make a short presentation of 15 minutes about what we've done in France, especially in Strasbourg, the university I'm from, and more generally also in France regarding researchers at risk. Just before my talk, I want just to say, it is not a slide, but to say why we do that in France. And I think I can connect to the previous speeches, because there are two main reasons. The first reason is that we defend human rights and especially academic freedom. And I refer here to the wonderful talk of Mr. Tsitsilikis. which was completely on the horizon we keep on in France. And second reason is what I would call social responsibility and solidarity. And I think we have had right now a wonderful example of what is to be a responsible university with what Mrs. Vitsaliki in the Aegean University made. So I think this is the two core values we believe in France, and that's why we try to host the best we can researchers at risk. So just want to start with the Strasbourg experience and say that, of course, we had the migration crisis of 2015. Sorry. And with the crisis of 2015, we became aware that we have an issue with migrants, generally, and with refugees. But the story with refugees in France and in Strasbourg began before. And the first step in Strasbourg was in 2009, when the Turkish sociologist Pinar Selek came to France, first to Germany and then to France, because she was persecuted in Turkey. She was making research on the Kurd community. And this was, of course, as you know, in Turkey, not so good scene. And that's why we decided in Strasbourg that she could do her PhD in Strasbourg. And our rector, president at that time, Anna Beretz, granted her the right to what we called academic asylum. This is nothing in the French law, but this is something we thought it was valuable for us. And now Pinar Selek is still in France. She did the PhD and she has now a position, fixed position in Nice. But I also want to say that the history is not only recent history, but also that in the 20th century, we were concerned in Strasbourg with hosting and being hosted since when the Nazi came in 1939 to Alsace and they invaded Strasbourg. Strasbourg University has to flee. And all the university, the staff, the students, and all the city moved to Clermont-Ferrand in central part of France. And we as university, 2,000 people at that time, we were hosted by our colleagues in Clermont-Ferrand. So that's why when I came to the board of the university saying that we need to host researchers at risk, I said, remember the past. We have been hosted. We also were migrants, even in our own country. And this is our responsibility to do the same for people that now who now live in countries where you can't do research or you can't study, and that we have to host them. And we every year we commemorate this thing of being hosted in Clermont-Ferrand, and also with a tragic issue because in 1943 hundreds of scholars and students were taken by the Nazis and put in concentration camps because we were seen as resistance. And we commemorate that in order to be aware of what is being hosted and hosting. But now to the present years, just to say that we have launched in Strasbourg from 2015 on a global strategy for refugees, which means for students and for researchers. And it began with the Syrian crisis, and we decided to integrate our refugee students in a specific diploma we had for foreign students, which give French courses, basically, because the first issue for students, and as well for researchers, is to be integrated. And be integrated means speaking the language, and also being socially and culturally integrated. And that's why we had French courses, but also culture course on French culture in order that we create a bridge between the Syrian community and the community living in Strasbourg. And this was the first step in 2015, and we gave for that a budget of 100,000 euros for creating new groups, creating a help desk, and having staff for the accompaniment of students. And in 2 years later, we decided to have a comprehensive policy, saying that it's not only having a degree, but if we want to be socially responsible, we have to welcome students, but also researchers. And it came at a time when in France, the PAUSE program, which is the national program for funding university and welcoming researchers at risk in France, was launched. And at that time we said, if there is a national program, there will be a local policy. And the local policy includes the university diploma, which is actually a transformation of the degree we had generally for foreign students. And we created a specific diploma, which is called relié, which means retour aux études, turning back to study by learning language and interculturality for foreign students. You have the French title here. We created a help desk for students and researchers at risk with dedicated staff. It means 2.5 persons working on that. We have a steering committee of all this policy with vice president, with delegates, with staff, but also with the CRUS, which is a specific institution in France dealing with social and student life and giving grants to students. And of course, diverse stakeholders, especially in the city and local authorities. We have, we also launched a fundraising program in order to collect money from the civil society. And you see that in 3 years, we collected 45,000 euros for that. It's quite a good amount. And also we created, and that's much more important, a fund for researchers in exile or at risk that is coupled with PAUSE, because PAUSE, the PAUSE program in France gives 50 to, if you host most researchers, 80% of the amount of what a researcher costs. And we have to give the other part of the money. So we need also money from the university. And we decided to have 100,000 euros a year for researchers at risk. So now, if you, this policy has a budget of roughly 450,000 euros a year in Strasbourg. And you see how important the PAUSE program is, because more than 50% of the money for this program for students and researchers at risk comes from PAUSE, because they, of course, a student costs less than a researcher, and that's why the proportion of the PAUSE financing is so important. But you have to be aware of that. It means that having a national program or having a program that can fund researchers at risk is a very crucial and important point for launching a policy in this area. So some key figures. So since 2015, we had approximately at Strasbourg University 400 students and 9 scholars from 2017 on, because we launched a program for researchers 2 years later, as you heard. We have a very good attendance rate of students, roughly 80 to 90%, and also success rate of students in our specific diploma of roughly 80%, depending on each year and each semester. But so now we have lots of, regarding researchers at risk. So out of the 9, 8 are still on temporary academic position in our university. 1 has succeeded in getting a position. Now he's in a company outside university and make research on his domain in virology. Virology is quite an important issue now. But he has found, and for the others, we are trying with PAUSE together, and this is one of the main issues, to find jobs. It's not only one thing to host them. Another thing is, what do they do when they leave the university? Because sometimes you don't have permanent positions, so they need to find positions in other universities, and it's not so easy. So here you have a bit an overview of our stakeholders, in local stakeholders, but also national stakeholders like Agency for Francophonie, AUF. You have the post program. DR, it's the Ministry of Internal Affairs and also the city of Strasbourg. And we work with local authorities very much, also with the Préfecture, which is the representation of the state in Strasbourg. So just coming at the second level more quickly, but it's important to say this is what we have done in Strasbourg, but we were not the only ones in France. And I think it's important if in Greece you want to launch a national initiative that you base on local initiatives, and that all the local initiatives like you have in the Aegean or you have here in Thessaloniki or in other university, you gather and you are together, you build a group like we did in France, and then you can speak to the government, you can speak to authorities and try to make a deal with them. This is exactly what we did with our network, French network of universities committed to refugees. In 2016, you see, we had quite a lot of local initiatives and we decided to get together. And you see on the right, on the graph, the increasing number of universities having joined the network. And now our network is an association. It is hosted by the Conference of Rectors, so which is also very important to have a weight. And we have 36 universities out of 75 in France, which means that we have half of the universities involved in such programs. And when we speak with that voice, we are heard by the government because they know that there is quite an important proportion. So this is just some pictures of our network and some important milestones. So we started in 2016. It was quite informal, and now we became just 2 weeks ago an association. And you see, it's 36 universities and 11 partners. I made a mistake, but roughly we have 2,000 refugee students each year in our programs, and POSE hosted since 2017 201 scholars. I know that Laura Loéac is listening to us. She's the executive director of POSE, and maybe she would correct if the figure has changed meanwhile, but I guess that roughly saying 200 is a good thing. Actually, Laura, you can see her because she's the lady on the third from the left, and the lady with the second on the left was the counselor of the Minister for Higher Education in 2017 when the POSE program was launched. So we have to thank both of these people to have been engaged and have helped us to create what we did for researchers and for students at risk. So what POSE does, you know it, POSE is partner of the Inspireurope program. So it does financial support, training courses, meetings, advocating. And we universities, we have to give a position in the research unit to take in charge 20 to 50% of the position, depending on how many researchers you host. And we have to give assistance for accommodation. And in some cases, we also do mentoring and French or English courses in order to improve the skills of the researchers. So you see the figures. We have 78 higher education institutions in France involved in that. So last slide is a slide on the challenges and the perspectives. If I'm on time, 2 minutes, okay. So for us, the main challenges in France now is the integration in the French of the researchers in the French academic life, the social integration, of course, and if the integration is not in the university, then we have to think about other ways, especially on the labor market in the companies. And POSE is really working now with an association, l'Association Bernard Grégory, in French, who deals with that. And it's for us a very important issue, but I know that you have a specific session on that this afternoon. So it's an issue that will be addressed. And there is now is COVID-19, a new issue, but which is what about the borders? It was for me not easy to come from France to Greece. And I'm not a migrant. I'm a vice president of the university. That's not so easy. So regarding migrants, the way of how migration is going to develop in the next year will change, and we have to be aware of that and to adapt. So yes, saying that we have well, perspectives, we want to develop coaching, and especially what I think is very important here for Greece is that we want to build up a network not only at national level, but also at international level. I spoke to that to your Vice President for Academic Affairs here in Thessaloniki. If there is a network of Greek universities, we would be happy as the French network to work with you together, to give you information, to exchange good practices, and also to advocate together towards Brussels. I heard from Brussels that they are open. I know we have also EUA today, and Henriette, whom I am greeting, is also completely with us. EUA makes a wonderful job with us together. And also UNIMED, the Union of the Mediterranean Universities, makes great job. So if we are all together, I think we are stronger. Sorry, this is, and the last slide is, of course, the main issue for everybody is how we will be supported by national policies, by international policies in a context of a crisis, in a context which is changing every day. But we have to keep on what are our core values: social responsibility and academic freedom. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mathieu. Yes, we need to work together, and I hope you already talked with our rectors, and Rector Vitsilaki is also here, so we can discuss that a bit later. We don't have a lot of time. We move on quickly to Henriette. So, Henriette, your call.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandros, and also Mathieu for the introduction already given to EUA. I hope you can see my screen, if you could confirm that. Yes. Perfect. Yes. So let me just go into presentation mode. Okay, wonderful. So yes, as introduced, I'm from the European University Association, where I'm a policy analyst. And as Mathieu Schneider has already mentioned, have been working on the topic of inclusion of migrants, refugee students, and researchers at risk with EUA for quite some time. We are immensely pleased to participate and continue our work in this field in the Inspireurope project. And my presentation today will slightly adapt the title of the panel. I will focus on European universities more than the Greek universities and how they build a culture of welcome for researchers at risk. And I would like to present to you a small snapshot of a report that we will be publishing in about a month's time that we have conducted for the Inspireurope project, mapping the support that is available in Europe for researchers at risk. Before I go into details, just a couple of words on EUA, the European University Association. We are a membership association currently bringing together around 800 higher education institutions in 48 countries, the countries of the European higher education area, as you can see here on the map. So actually also when I talk about Europe, I actually mean this kind of Europe as depicted here. We also have as members rectors conferences in 33 countries. And as an organization, we kind of have a double role. On the one hand side, we bring our members together to work and discuss topics of interest in projects and events. But on the other side, we are also involved in European policy development. For instance, as a member, as consultative member to the European higher education area and the Bologna process. Okay. Now, as I have said, I would like to give you some examples from the information that we have collected for the Inspireurope project in the mapping report, with the aim to really see what's available for researchers at risk, but also to see what the challenges are that they are facing and how we can be better addressing those with the work that we are currently undergoing in Inspireurope. And the report is based on reviews of reports specifically from support organizations, but it also relies quite a lot on surveys that we have conducted with 3 stakeholder groups, namely host institutions and organizations, researchers at risk themselves, of course, and the support organizations and projects that are mostly co-funded by the European Union that already have been working on this very theme. And of course, we have considered the input, for instance, from the SUPRA project, where Aristotle University was a member, as well as Bridge and Korea, which have been previously mentioned by a previous panelist. But today, in my intervention, I would like to focus mostly on the side of the higher education institutions. You can see here that actually in the survey sample, the largest share of participants came from countries such as Germany and France, the Netherlands and Norway, but we also have quite some participation from especially researchers in the UK and other countries. Okay. Now, a culture of welcome, current and future hosts. Here you can see the participants from the higher education institutions in our project's research and whether they are hosting. And about half of them said, yes, they currently host. Another 12% said they did so in the past. And you can see actually there was quite a few institutions participating in this research who were not currently hosting, but were very interested in the topic. So we only asked them a couple of, a subset of questions for our inquiry, but you know, questions around their motivation and around their setting as a university and whether they could potentially host researchers at risk were still very valid. Of the sample, 90% or so were higher education institutions. We also had some participants from research institutes and the non-academic sector. And 2 important points here, 66% offer temporary contracts or placements only, and 52% said that they hire researchers at risk of any level and do not focus on any level of seniority. And if there was a focus, then that mostly was on level R2 as defined by Euraxis indicators. Those are recognized researchers who have a PhD and are currently at the beginning of their research career. This slide actually resounds also with what has been said by previous speakers, specifically by Mathieu Schneider. Why are higher education institutions involved in hosting researchers at risk? Very clearly, you can see here, this is framed as a matter of social responsibility. Universities say that it is based on explicit values of their institutions, and about half of them also link it to diversity and inclusion strategies overall or similar strategic level documents. So it is not so much of an issue to, for instance, get additional public funding or to fulfill diversity quotas for staff and students, as you can see here further down on the graph. Before I go into this, I would like to apologize for this massive graph, and I would like to invite you not to look into the details, as I will not be going into the details as well. I still depicted it here just to show you the share between what is on offer at institutions to welcome researchers at risk and to support them. The share of researchers at risk is the light blue bars in comparison to what is available to all international researchers. And you can quite clearly see here that actually a lot of the language courses, skill training and so on is available to all researchers. There's not so many activities and services that focuses specifically on this very target group. Now, there are several reasons for this potentially. On the one hand side, of course, researchers at risk are researchers and belong to this very group. They might be representing a small group at a higher education institution, but also there might not be actual additional funding available to offer services such as, you know, language courses or staff development specifically geared towards their needs and interests available. But if I could just point to one example, the most likely instance here, and it was also mentioned by the University of the Aegean, are mentoring schemes or buddy systems with local academics and researchers, students, which are available at 20% of the hosting institutions that have participated in the survey. Yes, I I just recently mentioned funding, and I would like to elaborate a bit more on this point. Here on this graph, you can see the most relevant sources for higher education institutions to fund fellowships, placements, and also accompanying measures. 55% of the participating host institutions said that they have received some external funding to conduct these kind of activities, and another 10% also managed to repurpose external funds that they had received for other activities in order to support researchers at risk. But up to 72% says clearly they either directly or at least co-fund fellowships, grants, and so on with the institution's core budget. Other important sources are also listed here: charities and foundations, for instance, national funds, which are available in some of the European countries, and researchers bringing their own funding, for instance, through the support organizations that are part of the Inspireurope project and beyond. One of the main aims of the project was to see what challenges are faced by researchers at risk in Europe and how we might work to overcoming those challenges. And here I try to summarize them all on one slide. Quite clearly for the researchers at risk, which is depicted in the graph, finding employment, specifically employment that actually matches their academic and professional background, was one of the main issues, followed by the temporary nature of the employment contract or the placement. And I have mentioned this previously, in the large majority, institutions indeed only offer temporary contracts. And in the research for the project, we also saw that the temporary nature was usually involving 1 year for those fellowships or placements, in some cases maybe 2. And this is quite an issue for researchers at risk arriving in Europe, trying to settle in, conducting research, and potentially also looking for follow-up employment, all within the time frame of 1 year. This also links to the transition generally from a fellowship placement into different employments. Enhancing skills in the local language is another big issue. The table at the bottom summarizes the feedback on challenges from the support organizations and the host institutions, and that actually aligns quite nicely. Very clearly, we see that there is a shortage of dedicated funding, which both stakeholders see as one of the major challenges to host researchers at risk, particularly funding for fellowships and placements directly dedicated to the target group. Support organizations also highlighted the competitiveness of the academic labor market, and the non-academic labor market in Europe, actually, in terms of transitioning from a placement towards long-term employment. So in the report, as I said, this was just a very short snapshot, and I invite you to have a look at it at the end of October. In the report, we actually do not issue concrete recommendations at the end, as one probably mostly does at the end of such reports. This is because we would actually like to use the findings that we have gathered here and to further work in the Inspireurope project and to discuss on how to arrive at concrete policy recommendations. So what you can see here is a list of conclusions, or perhaps a summary of the findings. And without going into much detail, I would just like to call them out. So first point here, a European support and fellowships for researchers at risk. I have highlighted just recently the need for additional funding for researchers at risk, and indeed whilst there might be Horizon or Erasmus Plus projects or the MSCA projects such as Inspireurope, who really work for the cause of researchers at risk, what is currently not available is a fellowship program, and the Inspireurope project will certainly advocate and work hopefully work towards such a program coming up at the European level in hopefully the near future. Second point is enhancing long-term prospects for researchers at risk. And I had just mentioned this is actually one of the main issues, given the usually limited time frame to find follow-up employment, to settle in for those who want to stay, to have perspective at long-term integration. There's a need of prolonging placements and also of offering guidance, mentoring, and so on, to navigate the European research labor market, which is the next point, and to enhance their long-term prospects in Europe. Point 4 then, enhancing information and training at host institutions particularly. We know that quite a number of things are already on offer, and I have shown you this very large graph to give you some examples of what higher education institutions do, but also this can be enhanced in terms of what they can deliver as support to the researchers at risk, but also in terms of peer learning with other higher education institutions or with institution networks that already work for researchers at risk and refugee students in order to enhance their welcoming of the target groups at their very own campuses. The gender dimension of support for researchers at risk is another issue that the Inspireurope project strives to look into in more detail in the future, as it is found that the majority of applications the support organizations receive are from male scholars. And this may have to do, of course, with the situation in the countries. It might have to do with the gender gap at postgraduate levels, but the large number of the share cannot only be explained by these aspects. So support organizations already are making specific efforts to look into and increase the number of applications for female researchers, and this will be another topic for the coming years of the project. It was already mentioned in some of the keynotes this morning. One of the very untapped opportunities at the moment that we see in Europe is the collaboration and opportunities in the private sector or in the non-academic sector. So working with private enterprises, with businesses who conduct research. Researchers at risk who participated in the surveys have actually pointed out a lot of interest around this field, but it was quite clear that currently not much is on offer to build the bridges, to build the links to businesses and research institutes in the non-academic sector. And last but not least, policy level support for researchers at risk. So beyond the need for policies and funding from the European and national levels to enhance the situation of fellowships, there's also need to link the plight of researchers at risk to broader policy debates on migration, on academic freedom, on the societies in democracy. And again, the project's partners will work very hard towards this goal within the next year. My last slide here, and also linking to my very last point, creating a culture of welcome at higher education institutions certainly has to go hand in hand with the support of the policy levels at national and international or European stages. You may remember from one of my first slides and also from the previous speakers that a lot of higher education institutions frame the issue and support researchers at risk as a matter of values and societal responsibilities. And we at UEA would certainly agree with this point. Here on the slide, I just listed a couple of very, in the near future coming up, opportunities on the European policy level, of which we then of course hope that they would also trickle down to the national levels and that they would also imply additional project funding in those areas. So let me just give you an overview. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, there will be a communication on the European education area. While there's not many details available at the moment, it is very clear that a strong emphasis will be made on the protection and promotion of common fundamental values as a priority of the European education area overall. The European Research Area, mid-October, will gather a conference and they will sign what is called the Bonn Declaration. And in this declaration, member countries of the research area will sign to demonstrate in the next phases a joint commitment to freedom of research and academic freedom. And last but not least, the European Higher Education Area has already in its last phase, so up to 2020, been working on how to enhance the discussion on academic values, university values, including academic freedom and including issues surrounding the welcoming culture for refugees, for researchers at risk. And this work has resulted in a link to the communique, which the ministers who will meet in November 2020, probably not in Rome, but also online. And at this conference and with this communique, they will reaffirm their commitment to promoting and protecting the fundamental values in the entire EHEA through intensified political dialogue and cooperation as an indispensable foundation for quality learning, teaching and research, as well as for democratic societies. This is a quote from the draft communique to be signed in November 2020. What does this mean in practice? Well, in the next round of the EHEA, there will be a specific working group dedicated to deliberate how to best monitor values in the European higher education area, how to best discuss it amongst the 48 countries that participate. EUA, as a consultative member to the process, will certainly be part of this working group, and we will ensure that the findings and the discussions of the Inspire Europe projects will also feed into the work of this working group and the next phase of the education area. And last point here, and I put it with a question mark, a European or perhaps even a Marie Curie funded fellowship program for researchers at risk. I have mentioned that European funding support is definitely necessary, and I just would like to reiterate that we will certainly do our work to advocate for such a scheme in the hopefully very near future. Now, the materials that I have on the slide are actually all to be published, but I thought I'd share some general links anyway. You can see here where the report will be made available. We will have a launch event of the mapping report on 3rd November, where we will discuss it with scholars at risk and rectors from universities of our project consortium. And last but not least, I would like to underline that we are immensely grateful to the 260 participants of the research survey and of course the support of the consortium in gathering all the information for the report. We have collected a lot of data, and the report as well as this presentation only uses a tiny fraction of it. All of it will be made available though in form of graphs on EUA's SlideShare account. So I invite you to have a look, and if you do have any questions on the data or anything else, my contact details are here, and I would like to thank you for your attention. And I suppose I give the floor back to Alexandros, but...
Yes. Thank you very much. We move on with Professor Hionis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Triantafylidis. Hello I welcome you also in Thessaloniki. I don't know if you can see my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Please share your screen.
Yeah, I'm doing this.
It's the green button at the down from the screen. If you move your, yes. Okay. Full screen. Yes.
Right now.
If you can put it, we can see you, but if you put it in the presentation mode, then it will be even better.
Hold on a sec. I will do it. Now, I think it's better now. Eh?
From your right, yes, excellent.
Right,
we hear you. Yeah, we listen.
We managed to do it. Thank you very much for the invitation. Really, Mr. Triantafylidis. I welcome you.
15 minutes, please. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I also welcome the participants. I'm really very glad given the opportunity to participate in such an interesting discussion. Let me tell you, when I have been asked by Professor Triantafylidis and Director Stoyanidis to participate, I was really surprised, thinking that it would be a very good case to find a constructive way to increase the dimension of scientific capital in my country, adding professionals, researchers, university professors, whatever, that can increase actually the scientific capital in Greece. And I'm looking forward to see the practical implication and the results of this gathering, and I consider it's extremely important. It's very important, very crucial to discuss about the migration issues, especially in Europe, especially in Greece. You may know that the refugee crisis in Greece is among the main concerns, the main issues of concerns in the Greek society. So we have to open up the discussion and to find a way to approach all this crisis with some scientific tools. And this is the reason that I'm looking forward for the results and application of this gathering. Once more, I'd like to congratulate the organizers. In COVID times, it's difficult times. It's extremely difficult, I consider, to organize a conference. Let me also tell you that although that I was really wanting to be physical closely to you, but I couldn't manage to participate physically. But we managed to discuss, we managed to change ideas and to make the presentation. Dear Mr. Chairman and participants, it's my strong belief, not now, but since many years, that the international cooperation between researchers, scientists, academic professors, it will be at the center of the economic development and society changes. But it must be noted that with researchers and professionals, also we have to create the conditions for welcome them, but also to have to be sure that the newcomers as a researchers or academic professor or professionals, they really want to be absorbed by the society, having the willingness to alter some things of their behavior, and also to facilitate the participation process. Recently, not actually recently, but the last 5 years, we have experienced something extremely new conditions for Greece and Europe as well. There is a significant number of immigrants, refugees incoming to the European continent, and among them, there is a number of foreign citizens who can contribute to the scientific deposit capital of our society. I think all of us, we can agree that we really need to enhance the scientific level of our economy and to create the appropriate conditions so as to close cooperate with them, although that will be disagree at the process of absorption. So I'd like to discuss some ideas about the speeding up the process so as to facilitate the participation of immigrants to scientific society and to make more easy for society to absorb all these newcomers. Now, as an academic professor and member of the Greek Economic Chamber, I will present the existing situation, the main obstacles of the embodied process, as well as the benefit of the absorption and some of the cost of the absorption. And I'm looking forward to discuss some improvements, particularly to the bureaucracy process. Now, terms and conditions of a successful cooperation with foreign researchers, the case of the Greek University, let's start from the Greek University, and then to move on to the Economic Chamber. There can be no doubt that migration remains one of the most significant socioeconomic issues for Europe and Greece, as I have been told you. After the past transformation of Greece from a sending country of the decades 60s, 70s, and 50s, to a receiving country, which resulted in the entry of the great number of economic immigrants. The recent refugee crisis has modified the feature of the immigrant population. Now, the terms and conditions of a successful cooperation with foreign researchers, the case of the Greek University, the demographic shift to low mortality and low fertility, as well as its blight population aging and seeking working age population, is one of the most important challenges for a prosperous future of many countries, Greece as well. Now, according to the Eurostat forecast, the population of Greece is going to be reduced from 10.7 million in 2018 to 8.4 million in 2070. In addition, the elderly dependency ratio is increased from 34.4% in 2080 to 63.4% in 2050. And then it's further decreased to 58.4% in 2070. We understand what that it means, not only for the scientific capital, but also for insurance, for the labor market, for the economy as a whole. Now, since the outbreak of the crisis and the Memorandum of Understanding 2010 situation should compete the brain drain. The brain drain in Greece will make it very difficult for the country to recover from the economic crisis and then return to normality. Immigration should cover this gap, or we hope to cover this gap and participate in the labor market of our country. In recent year, Greece has witnessed an increased level of migration from outside its border, especially the last 2 or 3 years. The inflow of immigrants, legal or illegal refugees, or I don't know the appropriate word, also has a significant territorial impact and brings both opportunities and challenges to Greece. If migration is managed successfully, it may bring a number of benefits to Aegean, to the university, to the professionals, and the capital and scientific stock of our country. Of course, not all immigrants will be successfully absorbed in the country labor market, and especially to the scientific society, with the major part of the immigrants finding work in a very low-paid position, as a part-time or not finding work. Furthermore, Greece labor market faces a shortage of workforce regional despite high unemployment. If we really want to overcome this situation, we should increase the inflow of immigrants in jobs, high and low skills, or increase the mobility of domestic workers. Only recently, now from the point of view of economists and economic researchers and academic professors, only very recently economists examined the contribution of migrants entrepreneurs and the contribution and the real contribution to the economy. This is, first of all, there are a lack of data in order to evaluate the contribution. The second is that the immigrants prefer to be self-employment in order to avoid lower paid jobs. In Greece, we should give them the benefit if they want to open up their job. Supporting refugee entrepreneurship, refugee entrepreneurs globally would be an interesting agenda. Provides 3 types of this program. 3 types of these programs. I explained you some things, I presented you some ideas, but these ideas coming from the economic point of view. I don't know if it's feasible to be adopted by countries, by public administration, or by international law. The fast-track work visa is very important, entrepreneur visa, and special startup visa. Let me present you some things as regards the immigrants, the scientific staff, and the economic chamber, the Greek economic chamber, where we have a very, very low rate of absorption, according to the finding and the data provided by the economic chamber. Let me tell you that until then, 2020 and 2019, we didn't have even one participation, one registration of immigrants in the registration data in the registration bureau of the economic chamber. And I don't have the data from other years, from the previous years, that means 2018 to 2017, but I will tell you with certainty that we cannot have even one registration to the economic chambers. And this is a point of concern, this is a point of discussion. According to my mind, why this situation is coming? First of all, there is insufficient knowledge of the language in the country of destination. That means Although that I have in my mind some cases, some immigrants that they have the qualification, the characteristics, and the degrees in order to make the world of accountants, let's say, or economists, or being able to register to the economic chamber, but they don't know the language. So this is quite important barrier. The second one is there is an inadequate preparation for moving to the new country without the necessary document. As a result, the qualification of high qualified people are not recognized. That means they don't have the bureaucratic procedure supporting the degrees, supporting the degrees obtained by their universities or whatever. So it's extremely difficult to be registered and to get the license from the economic chamber without having the necessary documents and the recognized documents for being able to register to the economic chamber. This is, according to my mind, the main reasons where the last year we have not even one registration. Lack of startup capital. And then let me tell you that it's a little bit difficult for the bureaucracy, the public administration of the Greek states to get a license in order to be able to be an official accountant, let's say, in the Greek economy. So there are some important delays as regards the recruitment, as regards the participation of qualified immigrants to the profession of economists, the professional of accountants or whatever. More or less, I would tell you, the same also things holds for the Greek universities. That means it's difficult to have an official cooperation with someone without having documents from recognized universities. Okay, in the universities we can bypass the problem of languages, but it's difficult to bypass the problem of bureaucracy and the qualified the documents and the degrees. Now, look what's going on. According to the law of 2515 of 1997, in order to register as a member of the Economic Chamber of Greece and as any chamber, either speaking as a technical chamber or I don't know, whatever, it's necessary to be registered in order to get a license and being a recognized professional. Otherwise, you cannot make we cannot be recognized as a qualified person in order to make the job of economist or as an accountant. Graduates who use their degree for professional purposes in the public or private sector from the following universities are obliged to register as a member of the chamber. All the graduates of economics department from the Greek highest education institutions and all the equivalent school or departments of economics abroad. And the magic word here is the equivalent. In order to support the equivalency of the University of Syria, let's say, or Bangladesh, or Pakistan, or whatever, is a little bit difficult to recognize and to submit papers supporting the equivalency of the economics department. And this is the major obstacle, according to my mind. Apart from that, they should have a recognized degree in economics. The main problem is the bureaucracy and the lack of evidence. In 2020, as I have told you, we don't have not even one registration for immigrants in Economic Chamber of Greece. And this is officially until now, but I passed through very roughly from the data of the previous year, 2019, 2018, 2017, and we don't even have any registration. At the end, I would like to present you some things in order to have a most clear idea about the situation of immigrants in Greece. And this is provided by the Hellenic Republic Ministry of Migration Policy. In order to see from my presentation that the immigrants having tertiary education holders, that they are tertiary education holders are a very simple, a very low minority. There are just a few immigrants having a tertiary education degree. So it's difficult to be absorbed by the universities or by economic chamber. Major part of them, as you can see from the tables that are also included in the presentation, are immigrants without having any degree or having more than 6-year education. So the difficult job is to find out the immigrants that can contribute to the capital stock of this country, to identify the degrees, and then to embody them either to the university, to the research sector, or to the professionals. I think this is a very difficult job. It's a very difficult job, and we have to open up the discussion for mutual good. This is the reason that I'm really looking forward for the results of this discussion, the practical implication of this gathering, in order to give the opportunity to both the Greek universities, also to the economic chamber, to alter a little bit the procedure of the absorption. I'd like once more to thank you very much for your attention, and I will be here for any question. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Professor Chionis. We quickly move on to Aras, who will also present his personal story. Sorry for this. As we have a small problem to connect the last presentation, we can ask the rest of our speakers to discuss some points raised by our attendees. So, first of all, I would like to read something from Zekeraya Akturk. It is great to see so many scholars and representatives of different institutions sharing their views here. I have a fundamental question to all participants of this event. As Ned O'Connor has pointed out, the number of scholars is increasing worldwide. Of course, I value the strategies and efforts for supporting scholars at risk. I personally feel supported and protected. However, I think that there should be measures to stop and prevent this disaster. What are your suggestions at this point? I invite Professor Tsitselikis first, if he wants to give us his views on that. And then we can also ask our rector, Vitsilaki, as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think this remark is very important. Should be the main target of any discussion, should be the capital remark of any discussion about the refugee issue. How to stop the disaster of wars in the Middle East, in Africa, of how regimes of dictatorship or other totalitarian regimes destroy their own countries, how economic situation destroys the economies of so many countries in the globe. I think we'll escape a little bit from this because it's too far from our powers and capacity, unfortunately. We should always keep in mind that we should, in any case, in any occasion, start with this remark and exert pressure to the governments around. This, I think, is the only thing we can do. But for sure is the basic for this kind of discussion. Thank you.
Professor Vitsilaki, what are your views, and how do you think also the Greek universities should work together on helping and supporting researchers at risk? Can you hear us? Yes?
Who are you addressing?
Yes, Professor Vitsilaki. The question, again, it's a more general question, but it is important for all countries as well. The number of scholars is increasing worldwide. I value the strategies and efforts for supporting scholars at risk, but I think there should be measures to stop and prevent this disaster of scholars leaving their countries. What do you think your suggestions are at this point? Or what can we do? How can we help as universities, or how can we help as a state? What is your opinion? This is
on our
yes, thank you.
On our part, and given the broader international conditions and relations as they are shaping, you can tell that solving the refugee issue goes through the attempt to solve or intervene in addressing major geopolitical conflicts that are underway. Unfortunately, and this is an admission of failure, universities cannot play a very major part in this. We can have a voice as academics and as citizens, but unless we help solve the conflicts that give rise to these major refugee waves, unless we can help across European institutions, collective institutions and global institutions to try and contain the activities of regimes that know nothing about functioning with democracy, we will not be able to salvage but very, very, very few people, very, very few academics and their integrity and their work. So we have to understand the broader issues, economic, social, as I said, geopolitical, that give rise to these refugee waves. We see now that we have had in Greece, for example, we were at the brink of war with Turkey across our shore here, where the refugees were coming off, battleships were lining up. And that there was nothing that anyone could do to address, and we see now that even European institutions and the EU is not very much ready to address. Although we know that there is some question of the lady that put under the question and answer section, what can we do to help directly? We can all try and raise our voice as academics. We can try and do it collectively. We can try and do it through existing institutions. But unfortunately, we have to understand the power of vested interests at a geopolitical level, which make this very, very difficult. And that is the reason why we end up helping we can on the shores.
I will come back to you and ask again about the role of the universities. But now I think Aras is ready to present his presentation. So.
This is a big pleasure for me today and here with you, and thank you for Mr. Triandafilis to invite me. My name is Ahmad Arash Himmati and I'm from Afghanistan. I'm born in Kabul. When I was 12 years old, I came as a refugee in Iran with my family because on that time in my country started the war. And when I finished my school in Iran, the refugees don't allow to go to the university. And this was in my dream to one day I go to the university and study. But unfortunately, in Iran, we can't go to the university. And I started to work Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay.
Okay, from I have from here.
I don't know the weathers. Can you? Dimitri, Yeti. Sorry for this.
Tora? Tora?
Okay, I think it's better.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. And there was no information in English about studying Greece, where I can go and register my name, how I can apply, where I can rent a house, where is exactly the universities. And on that time, I was thinking in future, I will build a website to give information for another foreign students to want to come and study in Greece. And when in 2014, I started to build the website of Study in Greece. And I am very happy today this website is the main page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Education in Greece, and help thousands of foreign students and give them information about studying in Greece. But today I came here to speak with you as a refugee and about the challenges in study in schools and in university in Greece, and what is the difficult for us to live as a refugee here and go to the universities. First of all, I want to speak about the difficulties for refugees to registration in the Greek universities. And after that, the challenges after they study, when we finish study, what we should do. And the end, I want to speak about the refugees who live in the camps, the children who they are can't go in school, they don't have access to any education. And I want to, because I have worked with them. I have worked more than 6 years in different of refugee camps. I have worked in most of four islands of Greece. I have worked in Athens, Thessaloniki, and I know exactly what is the problem. When we say in Greece, in university, why we don't have refugee? Why the mister from France come and say here, okay, with 445,000 euros, we make a program, and every year we have 2,000 refugee students in France. Why our minister, or from university, our teachers, when they come and give us a statistic, we don't have any students, we don't have one refugee students in the list of in the statistic list of Greek universities. This refugee who study now in France, most of them, they are coming from Greece. If they can study in France university, why they can't study in Greek university? The problem is about registration, the system of registration in Greece. A refugee, if wants registration in Greek university, should go in the same way like foreign students who come from Germany, Sweden, and Netherlands. If I go now as a refugee in Thessaloniki University and say, okay, I finished my school in my country and I want to now come and register in your university, what you will tell me? You will tell me, okay, go to the website of the Ministry of Education and write your name as all of a student from all of the world. And what they asked me, the ministry, they asked me, you should have all of your document with Greek translate and send us by the post. When I go for translate in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they say me, okay, your document must have stamp from our embassy to your country. I'm from Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, there is no embassy of Greece. For that stamp, should someone go from Afghanistan to Pakistan and Iran put a stamp in my documents? We lost our country, we come here in this country, and we don't have any connection with our country. Nobody in Afghanistan can't help me to bring my papers and go to Pakistan and put a stamp. This is the difficulty. The second difficulty is Greek language. Just 2 schools in all of Greece have access to teach students Greek, to send them in a university, the Aristoteles University and the Philosophical School of Athens. It's right. The refugees who live in the islands, if they want to go to university, they should come in Thessaloniki for 1 year, rent a house, pay 500 to 600 euros for the university to learn Greek language. After that, after 8 months, he should go and start university in a Greek language. All of the books in a Greek language, all of the lectures in a Greek language. After 8 months, if you go in a country and learn the language, can you study in the same level with the Greek students? It's impossible. We have to change the system of registration for refugees. Why in other countries? Why France? Why Holland? Why Germany? They can't give access for refugees to go in university and study. And thousands of refugees, they are studying now in the universities of these countries. Why Greece can't give them? Because Greeks don't have system for registration. Okay, we say in our statistic, we say, okay, we have informal education in the refugees camp. We sent hundreds of our teachers. These teachers who teach Greek in the refugees camp, they are not teachers. There are some volunteers. There are some students to come and teach the children. I am sure 10% of these people who come and teach refugees the language, they don't have diploma as a teacher. They never teach in the school or in university. I want to ask from a lecturer of Macedonian University, how many of your teachers now teach refugee language? It is 0, I'm sure, because I was there. I did last 50 years education system in Greece, I did a research of them. 2 years I was in a round of Greece to receive this research. I know the system is exactly the same between a refugee and a student who come from US and China. This is our problem in Greece. Also, if I come with my diploma in English, and if I have all of these stamps, they asked me, okay, after that, they say, you should go to the DOATOP. DOATOP is an organization to say if you're, with this diploma, if you can access to go in university or not. And you know how many months students should wait to answer from DOATOP? It is more than 2 years, mister. More than 2 years, and refugees should stay to DOATOP, can see if your diploma is okay for Greece or not. Why we say, okay, most of these refugees, they think Greece is a transit country and we want to go in another countries. But 75% of these refugees, I have the research from UNHCR, 75% of these refugees said we come in Europe not just because of the beautiful building. We come in Europe for education. If Greece give them education, why they don't stay in Greece? They don't stay in Greece because Greece don't give them education. Now in Greece, we have 118,000 refugees. And from them, about 60 or 70% of them, they are between age 5 to 30. But how much of them they are going to school and universities? Only 1,240 children, refugee children go in the school in islands from 6,000 children. When the refugee come in Greece, they lost everything they have. Greece asked for a student, refugee, you should have your birth certificate. A refugee who comes from Aegean with the boat, do you think he can bring with him all of the certificates from the birth? But they don't born in a hospital in Afghanistan. They born in a village, in a houses. They don't have birth certificates. I think it's a big problem about studying Greek universities, but after like me, some of people like me, who has dreamed to study and go all of these difficult ways and find a way to go to study in Greece. What will happen after studying Greece? Like me, like many of my friends, when we finish school, we don't allow to work in the Greek political office and the Greek government offices. We don't allow, just we can work in the shops or you can work in the factories, but I can't work in the ministries because I don't have citizen of the Greek. Why Muhammad, my friends, who study political science in Athens, why he now work in a restaurant in Athens? Why he don't work as a teacher in school and teach for refugee? Because when I teach a person from my country, when I teach him Greek, I can explain them because they are many, many years far from the study. They don't know grammatic from his mother language. How I can explain him what is verb in Greek? He don't know verb in his mother language. I can explain him first in my mother language what is verb. After I will explain him in Greek and teach him in Greek. Why Greek don't use as not a teacher, just a help of the teacher, a hand of the teacher? Because I can explain them. Okay, we don't have, I go very fast. Just, I want to say in Greece, we have right now just 84,000 refugees between 5 and 19 years old. And a quarter of these children have not completed any formal level of education. I go fast because you don't have time. Just 6% of refugees children, they are going to Greek normal school. From 31,000 school-age children, just 13,000 of them, they have access for education now in Greece. About the organization, UNHCR and UNICEF spent more than 2 million euros in the last 2 years to give education in the camps for the refugee children. What is the result? Show me 10 refugees in a refugee camp who can speak just a little word of normal words of Greek.
For us, let's conclude the discussion about schools because now we mostly want to see what's happening in the work sector. And
Is it open? Can you hear me? My name is Ariane Sojanidou. I am sorry, Mr. Speaker, but this is a European meeting, a world meeting, where we are discussing the issue of researchers at risk and how we can help them. And we are trying to have a fruitful exchange of ideas. I think what you're presenting, this is not a political podium, and what you're presenting here, many of the facts are facts, but also this is not the way to address a scientific public. I'm very sorry, and I do apologize, Mr. Chairman, for my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I said all of this to give,
Mr. Chairman,
in the end, to say what we should do.
Sorry.
Give better educational level in Greece, in Sweden, in Greece.
thank you. Yes, of course. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, I think we have previously checked the presentation. Instead of having this kind of presentation for Mr. speaking briefly, instead of being very grateful and thankful for giving him the possibility to address some very specific issue as regards the absorption of us in scientific community, we had a propaganda blaming Greek universities, the Greek public administration system for having so many immigrants here. I think you should have checked the presentation before giving the ground to anyone speaking in this way. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Professor Hionis. It's a different thing, the presentation and the discussion, yeah. So,
Can I just say one word?
yes.
Many of the issues and the problems that we heard, and one can understand the anguish of a person, but it is the case that for those of us who are trying and are part of their lives and their energy to support, it is clear that it is quite unfair. But let me just say that all of the problems that the speaker noted are not problems that are addressed directly at the refugees. There are problems that, for example, with the OATAP, or the Institute of Recognizing the Degrees, it is a problem that we all face. I personally faced it, and I waited for 20 years. So it is necessary to affirm that Greece and Greek people have taken the brunt of the whole refugee crisis, as I tried to say at the beginning, being the gateway to Europe. The ones that are the better supported and in better condition are the ones that are lucky enough to go to the rest of the countries in Europe. I do agree with both Professor Stoyanidou and Professor Hionis that one must recognize, and if the refugees that we are ourselves trying to help do not recognize it, it is an issue and we understand it. But at least we call upon the rest of the participants here who have also spent their energies on supporting refugees to keep continuing to do so, even if this is not recognized by some of the beneficiaries. Thank you.
If I could, yes. Professor Costarella, you can open the... No.
I just wanted to say that we should not take it very personally. I'm sure that the speaker didn't want to insult, and I think that we should not be offended. Maybe sometimes the way that someone addresses very emotionally the issues becomes a problem. I would think that we should focus on the issues concerning the registration problems and the ADAPT. I'm sure all of us who have been in this process of trying to find a way to recognize previous qualifications of refugees have been in this situation. So I think that we should not take this very personally and continue with our fruitful discussion.
If I could also, thank you very much, Professor Costarella. If I could also add, there are some points that all Greek universities have been working a lot on trying to integrate refugee students. At least those participants that are here, along with a lot of others, have done a lot of work trying to support refugee students, and especially Aristotle University has helped with Greek language courses and other ideas. I think, and this is something, I will give you the floor, Mathieu, immediately. At least what has been done, but still we need to implement it a bit more, is the passport issue, the academic passport. This is an initiative from the Ministry of Education. It has been going on for a lot of years, and there have been a lot of passports issued. And if we can go a step forward for that, is to link that both with entrance to the universities as an answer to the fact that refugees do not have the papers. So we can use that to give them the open access to the university and also to the workforce. This is something that I think the rectors can work on that with the Ministry of Education as regards this passport initiative of the Ministry of Education. I give the floor to Mathieu.
I just wanted to, can you hear me? Now it's working, okay. Just wanted to say, the workshop is on building a culture of welcome at Greek universities. And from my experience in France, it's very important to hear also what the people you welcome have to say about the obstacles, the hurdles they meet. So we have a double concern. The concern of the universities, what we can do in our core missions, what can we do to develop new programs, and what do refugees need? And we have to meet these expectations. And out of this meeting, you can have advocacy. You can try to discuss with the government. This is one thing I wanted to say. About recognition, this is a main issue for everybody. And not only for refugees, we have also foreign students that meet this problem. There is two things I want to say about that. There was a Convention of Lisboa, Declaration of Lisboa, which is a European declaration. I guess Greece should have signed, like many or all the European countries, almost all of the Western and Eastern countries, which says that universities and states have to organize the recognition of prior learning in their own country. So I don't know what has been done in Greece, but this is also, I mean, for university rectors, a possibility to say, if Greece has signed, they can go to the government and say, what do you do? And there is an answer, not only in Greece, but now the Council of Europe is working on a European passport for qualification for refugees. We have been, some universities in France have tried this new passport, and I think that Greece could join the initiative.
No, we already the initiative.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have been issuing at least 200 passports to refugees.
Okay, so
in the first cycle from the start, yeah.
So this is what I wanted to say. So I think that there are perspectives, and you have to work together with the persons concerned, researchers and refugees and students concerned with the welcoming programs.
Yes, of course.
Thank you for your comments. Just I want to tell, I have studied in this country and I love to this country. When I speak about this country, I don't say Greek university are not good. I don't say the teachers are not good. They are excellent. They are great people. But today I came to speak about problem. What refugees, what problem have refugees, and what we can do to help and to list this problem. For sure, Greece helped me to study in this country. But I don't want to say the universities in Greece are not good or they don't help the refugees. But I say this now, in my opinion, we have these problems. How we can lose this problem?
And if I would ask Henrietta to give us her view as well. We know that there are more problems maybe in Southern Greek, in Southern Mediterranean universities, Southern European universities in regards to Central European. How do you see this changing? I mean, do you have this information from the survey about how is the attitude of universities changing? Because you have been following that for so many years.
Thanks, Alexandros. Very interesting question. And perhaps first, I would like to also reflect back to the previous speaker and specifically on the issue of recognition. You know, I also understand and can only try to imagine the difficult situation of a refugee student or researcher going through the system and trying to get access. We have done quite a lot of research on this also in Greece. And Mathieu already mentioned the Lisbon Recognition Convention. Okay, Greece is not a signatory of this convention as are most European countries, but I think even in the absence of the signature, there is a lot to learn from other countries on how, you know, how they enhance the situation along the lines of Article 7. And that's the point I wanted to underline. Actually, the convention has an article that says that signatory countries should have measures in place to recognize the skills of refugees, even in the absence of documentation. And of course, the refugee passport is one of the aspects that covers this. And I think in this regard, also in Southern Europe, including in your own country, this is actually one of the major steps taken in the last couple of years. But reflecting more on the general situation, and you know, Alexandros, most of EUA's work was with regards to students with refugee background, not so much researchers. But I suppose one can make some general remarks on what has changed over the years. First of all, you know, clearly even in 2015, the higher education sector showed high commitment to support refugees and those in a refugee-like situation, to welcome them not only in their countries, but also in their campuses. What has critically changed and what we are very happy to see is that a lot of the initiatives have started up as bottom-up, you know, some volunteers are going to the camps, giving some courses, or you know, trying to get some spaces at the universities, trying to fundraise some scholarship money, offering buddy or mentoring systems. We have seen a lot of this right from the get-go. But over the years, I'm quite pleased to say that the situation has changed and the topic more and more has been addressed at the central level of the university. So from the strategic level, discussed also by the presidency, directorship, and so on and so forth. And this is very crucial in terms of making such initiatives sustainable, long-term lasting, and of course also increasing the numbers. You know, I don't want to say that small numbers are bad. Actually, it's about quality and the activities, the quality of the activities to integrate refugee students and researchers into higher education, rather than how many people did you manage to put in. But of course, over the years, if it is just a bottom-up initiative and there's no leadership support, then it cannot succeed in the long term. And from the Inspireurope project, we actually asked whether lack of leadership support was an issue. And amongst the participating institutions, at least, this was not a very great challenge. However, of course, the sample is flawed in the way that most of those who participate were explicitly interested in the topic and already were hosts. So for the future, I hope that by collaborating in projects as this and across organizations and networks such as the French network and through UA, this can be further enhanced.
Thank you very much, Henriette. I think we're well ahead of the time. We should have finished 15 minutes ago. I think we all need a break and some lunch. So if Professor Tsitselikis, would you like?
I would like just to say that Mr. Hemati's presentation gave us a lot of figures and facts that are correct, despite of the sentimental way of the presentation. It's not something propaganda, as Professor Hioni said. The problem is that the Greek governments, and I insist in S, both of them in the past 5 years, were in fact not willing or even hostile to any reception policies. And the reception policies means that you give and you offer the means for people to integrate. So integration is absolutely missing. So how to integrate when you don't talk the language of the state, when you are not recognized as a person legally? So I can remind you that in Greece, more than 80% of the people are not recognized as physically as legal entities. So they are in a limbo station, and these are facts also. So we have only 20% that have a legal, they have papers, and there are tremendous difficulties into going in this direction. So legal uncertainty is very important, that undermines any possibility for people, scholars, non-scholars, who have to keep, I mentioned this in my speech, who have to care about all of them, first of all, and then to select our group, academics or researchers, that are living in uncertainty in a hostile Europe. Because even the pact that the Commission is now discussing is hostile. So the first concern of Europe is to return people back. And the majority of people are now queuing in these returned procedures, so there's no integration at all. So Professor Hions also was asking why we don't have even one refugee or migrant as member of the chamber, economical chamber. Of course, because they don't have any means to advance in this procedure. Okay, thank you very much.
Professor Tsitselikis. We'll have more time in the afternoon to discuss more things about academics and how we can help the university's researchers. I thank you for your presence here or on the internet. We continue in 25 minutes. Thank you.